Now, if you haven't already looked at my YouTube channel or you haven't gotten an email with links to what Deja Vu dating is all about, I am going to give you the opportunity to just learn very quickly why I'm focused on this. And I would love it if you would put in the chat whether you've ever had the experience of deja vu. It's an interesting moment when that happens. And once again, I'm Annie Salas, and I welcome you to Deja Vu Dating, which is a small bite today of a really big topic. And so I want to make sure that you get grounded in the information over these next 5 days. And we're going to take about an hour to do this each day. So, welcome to day one. Now, here's a quick definition of déjà vu, which is a French expression, which for them means already seen. Already seen. And it is the feeling that you have lived through the moment that you're in your present situation, that you lived through it before and that you have a memory of it, although you are aware that you're in it for the first time live in your body. This is a very, very interesting phenomenon. Happens to people quite a bit. Deja vu. So with deja vu dating, you are having the feeling that you're on a date with someone that you may have met for the first time ever, but they seem really familiar. And you have the experience in that moment that you have done exactly what the two of you are doing, that you've done it before. It's almost as if there was a video recording of it somewhere and it just popped up and played for you. So put a yes in the chat if you've ever experienced deja vu dating. Well, how did I come into this focus of deja vu dating? So I've got to share with you my deja vu dating and marriages story. And that's why I've developed the deja vu dating information, because I've been through this. And I am not reluctant to tell people that I have been married 3 times for a number of reasons that were all about self-preservation, blended with self-sacrifice. And so I can tell you that my first marriage was at 16 when I eloped with my high school sweetheart, just to get out of a family situation that felt very unsafe to me emotionally. And although my parents worked very hard to keep us in a lovely house, good roof over our heads, we were nicely clothed, hair done, teeth brushed, trips to the dentist, meat on the table every night. And my mother often made some of our clothing by hand. She was very well able to knit and sew. And that was really a very stable life from the perspective of the material world. And again, I acknowledge both of my parents for doing that hard work. But my experience of being in that family was I often wondered how it was that I got there, because I wondered if I'd been adopted, or if somehow, that those were the days when people talked about the stork dropped you off. Yes, literally, this is what they told you, because you couldn't talk about sex. So the story was that a stork had delivered you. And when your mother, if you're having another sibling, your mother goes off to the hospital, it's so she can have her meeting with the stork. Absolutely hysterical. But at any rate, married one time, had one child, a darling son, my first son, who I absolutely still adore. And we've had our ups and downs, as all parent-child relationships do. But there was always a really core, solid kernel of this is unconditional love that we have for each other. And that's been maintained over decades. And it is a really powerful experience to know what unconditional love feels like. I was married for the second time when I met a man when I was 23 after I'd left my first husband. And we hung out, as was the custom in those days. We hung out and hung out and hung out and hung out and hung out until we were in a common law marriage, and the state that we lived in recognized that we have been married. We had been together for so long, living as couples live, husband and wife, that we were considered to be legally married, which meant that when we split up in 1990, my husband had to file for divorce because we were in a very complex financial arrangement, and it was an awful, awful, awful experience. The dissolution of my first marriage was fairly amicable. It was emotionally challenging, but we were not deliberately harmful to each other, which was not the case with my second relationship. My partner was very often deliberately harmful. And it was a relationship in which I had to navigate domestic violence. Didn't enjoy that, realized the end game of that, and finally got out of it after I had arranged a professional life for myself that gave me a sense of stability, that I would be able to leave that relationship and stay on my feet and keep going. So the third marriage was a sacrificial marriage, in the sense that I met a man who was living in the United States. He was Brazilian, and he had a young child, and he and his wife were living in New York State, and he had developed a very high-level contracting business. One of his clients was Billy Joel, and we got together. We met at a retreat, and it was just a really very romantic, very intense, very passionate way for me to generate a setup where I could exit from my second marital relationship, because though I had repeated again and again that I was ready to leave, the man who would become my ex-husband wasn't ready to let me go, and he used our child together that we had. I had a second child. He used that child as an emotional bargaining chip, which was unbelievably cruel and damaging to me and to that child, and we have not healed that damage yet. It generated a lifetime of hurt. And that's why, because I've been through this, I have stacks of journals, literally this high, with notes about what happened, how I felt, what I discovered, the way that my energy changed. This was a tremendously complex journey for me over the course of 25 years. And then I met a wonderful man. I was still really afraid, still really terrified of being hurt again, still really risk reverse. I wanted to avoid any more deep disappointment. And I missed my opportunity with that person, because we very carefully, because I was moving so slowly, we did form a lovely bond. And then I had to make a trip out of the country to do the work that I'm doing with you now. And he was making a trip back to the East Coast to visit his family. And we agreed he was going to meet me at the airport when I got back from that second trip to Europe. But he did meet me at the airport. And then I was concerned, because that wasn't like him. He was a very considerate, kind, teddy bear, wonderful, grounded guy who was divorced, and he had 2 young children. So I know what this is like. I've been there. I know what it's like to fail. I know what it's like to be in fear. I know what it's like to be having a sense that I'm on the verge of losing my sense of self, which has always been very strong and very, very available to me to drop into, to rebalance and get myself back on track. I was on the verge of losing all of that. And that's why I want to talk to you about deja vu dating. Because when I met my second partner, I had actually dreamt about him before we met. And I knew the night that we were meeting that he was going to be the one who showed up. It's a very powerful moment of deja vu. And I'm explaining this to you now because if you ever have it, you need to stop, pause, and check every red flag that has presented itself to you and slow way down. In my third arrangement, it was again, I was very aware that it was connected to what I considered to be a past life relationship. And the sacrifice that I chose to make consciously was more for his child than for the man I married. It was, in a way, a marriage of convenience. And it allowed him to be situated in the United States because his father was a prominent businessman in Brazil and could set up a franchise in the United States that my husband could run, and then he would be able to maintain the relationship with his young son that he wanted to have, even if it turned out that his ex-wife moved back to Brazil, he would still have much more flexibility in the relationship that we had as a married couple than without. So when I tell you I know, when I tell you I've been there, there's no way that I'm going to work my way out of it. I'm afraid, I'm terrified, I'm hurt, and I don't want any more disappointment. This may be something that you've already been through in your dating to mating journey. If you haven't, fantastic, you can leave this now, except you may know someone in your life, a friend, a sister, a relative, who you recognize. If you stay into this challenge, you'll recognize. And then you would be able to direct this person to come and work with me so that they could get themselves unhooked. Well, I did get unhooked, and I was able to free myself and go and begin living my life purpose. And this is just one shot. It's a quick glimpse of me working in a very challenging situation in the Soviet Union as it was collapsing. I was working alongside physicians who were treating children with fourth stage Hodgkin lymphoma. I had 6 young children in my charge, and 4 of them went into remission using the methods that I use for energy healing. And I had multiple wonderful opportunities working with burn patients, and the results again were medically verified and very, 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 very life-changing for some of the patients that I worked with, because they were able to return to a more normal life than anyone thought that they would. That's what freeing myself up of deja vu dating led me to. And there were men when I traveled. There were always men everywhere. And I learned how to work with my own energy field to develop friendships that were healthy and productive. I was even proposed to while I was in the Soviet Union, and I gracefully declined. He was a doctor. He wanted to marry me to get to the United States, and I declined because, as I said to him in my difficulty, and he had difficulty speaking English, first of all, we don't know each other and we don't speak each other's languages. Not a good fit. So what is this all about for you? That's my story in a quick snapshot. You're here because you are a successful professional or entrepreneur. Your heart is inviting you to find enduring love with your meant-to-be person. Haven't found them yet. Your hormones are asking you to create a family. You know the lifestyle that lights you up and generates enough and more abundance for you to share. And that's energy, money, time, interests, hobbies that you've developed. And you're ready to share those wonderful aspects of who you are with someone very special that you would like to be with for a long, long time. So you're either single, you have not yet married, you may have had a live-in relationship, and that had some issues that may come up for you as we go through this day of challenge one, day one, or you're divorced. So you're probably between the ages of 22 and 40, or you may be 45 to over if you're in the divorced range, although that does happen to younger people today. And we all know that that has its costs. You're open right now and excited about maybe being a parent, including filling the role of a step parent or a foster parent or an adoptive parent. And you're actively dating and going on dates once or twice a week. You're meeting the people you date through a variety of options, social connections, and events. Now, you've been dating for more than a year, spending time, energy, and money, and you may have gone out several dates with the same person, but then you both could feel that it wasn't a good fit. But you may have gotten yourself entangled, what I call into a quantum entanglement, usually through a combination of a kind of a slap and tickle energetic thing where it's hurt and satisfy, hurt and satisfy. And when this goes on, dating becomes more stressful than enjoyable. You're walking around on eggshells. And you maybe dated a few people more than a couple of times, and for you, it's gone south weirdly fast. And right now, it isn't going well. So if this is you, give me a yes in the chat. Now, in setting up this meme of deja vu dating, which is original to me, and I own the term in terms of a domain name, I don't own the term deja vu, but I do have a hold on the term deja vu dating. So there are new words, terms, and other names that I want to go into with you. You may self-identify as an empath. We're going to go into more information about the definition of that. You may know that you're the designated overgiver in your family. You're the go-to person that everybody calls when there's a challenge or a difficulty or a crisis, or the need for a heart-to-heart talk and some good, solid, sound advice. And this is one of your skill sets. But you could also be here as a taker, but you're not yet aware that you're working from the taker energy field. And we'll go into that, not today in day one, but we will throughout the challenge, because I have worked with many people who would identify, as they became clear of what was going on with them, that they were raised to be takers by their families. They end up usually as celebrities. Not every celebrity is a taker, but they have large energy fields that have to be fed, and they have to be fed somehow. And a lot of the energy that feeds them comes from their absorbing, collecting energy from other people, which is what happens in a big crowd. A performer puts on a show. There's a huge energy exchange, and that performer actually brings in more energy than he or she gives out during the performance. And how do we know this? Because the really big celebrities are mega millionaires. So the other term that you may not be aware of yet is the term energy field, because one of the things that you'll learn in this challenge is that there's more to you than can be seen with just the eyes. You are an organization of information, and it is energetic first before it becomes physical. And this is a really interesting process, and I will tell you that it's very straightforward, because you were an energy of desire between whoever decided to bring egg and sperm together through which you were created. You began as energy before you became a little egg and sperm that went into the conception process. You have, as part of your energy field, a very complex system of what are called in Hindu and Indian terminology is chakra. And chakra is really just a spinning vortex. It's a wheel of energy. And in your energy field, you have 7 embodied chakras, and you're more than just those 7 embodied chakras. You're a system of 15 chakras, and those chakras form shields. They generate keys and codes that actually interact with your DNA. And you have an emotional body and a mental body and a spiritual body, in addition to the physical body that you're sharing with me now here in this challenge. So let's go through some of our terms so that as we progress through the week, you can play with these ideas, and you'll have a really good sense of how the dots are connected by the time we get to day 5. If you're an empath, this means that you are energetically sensitive. Your chakras are open and flowing and picking up information all around. It's always being exchanged all the time. Even when you're sleeping, these exchanges of information and consciousness are going on 24/7 and more. So if that's you and you're an empath, you may have an expanded energy field, but you may not have developed strong boundaries because in your family, everyone sort of felt your energy field and they realized that you had the capacity to generate enough energy to help solve other people's problems. And so it's very common for an empath to be guided into becoming an overgiver. So you're able to see, sense, absorb, and actually help other people transmute difficult emotional or energetic pain body states, but you're also there to celebrate with them when life is joyful. You are able to sense, see, feel, absorb, and enjoy those energy states as well. But one of the problems with an empath is it can be difficult for an empath to distinguish their feelings from another person's feelings. And I know this was very confusing for me as a child because I had a strong bond with my father where I was feeling his emotional dynamics. And it was different from the strong emotional dynamic that I had going on with my mother. The emotional dynamic with my father was confusing, but it was loving. The emotional dynamic I had with my mother was confusing because I ended up being more of a mother to her than she was to me. And it was confusing because she had a lot of conflicting emotions, which came out through her in forms of violence. She kept a cat o' nine tails handy to whip us with if we irritated her or got out of line, which is how she would use that expression, or there was talk back because she was not prepared to have a conversation beyond a certain level, because she would drop into an authoritarian role and it would be do as I say and shut up. Well, I had to navigate all those feelings, and I did that because I was very sensitively aware, and as a result, I ended up developing a really, really powerful portfolio of what are known as psychic and spiritual gifts. I had a very emotional body. It was very fluid, transparent, but I was also very vulnerable. Empaths are vulnerable because they move into the empty space where the feelings become stopped and the communication stops and the energy becomes muddy and unclear. And an empath will move right into that empty space and find themselves being sucked into energy dynamics that are not healthy for them. It's part of the empathic journey and process. So if you know that you're an empath, please put a yes in the chat. The other dynamic that comes up in deja vu dating is someone who may not be aware that they're empath. You don't have to be an empath to be an overgiver, but you are very aware of other people's needs. And so you move energy to respond immediately to another person's stated or unstated needs. This means that you're more focused on someone else's care than on your self-care, and that you tend to meet your own needs as an afterthought. You're the one who will run around and take care of everybody else and go home and collapse. We have overgivers in our police departments, in our fire departments, our EMTs, our nurses, our doctors, and caretakers in the medical realm, in the spiritual realm, our pastors, and even our therapists are overgivers because they have enough coherent energy and they can make more of it so that they can step in and take care of someone else, and they're very active in that role, but they tend to be energetically passive, except when they're serving and caring for others. And sometimes that dynamic becomes so challenging to manage emotionally and energetically that some overgivers will develop addictions, and they manage their tendency to overgive and not take care of themselves through the use of drugs and other substances. Because this I will share with you, if you don't take anything else away from this challenge, the human being and the human body must have access to bliss or it cannot survive. And in our relationships with each other, sharing and exchanging energy as whole beings, we're not in competition, we're in win-win, we're dealing with each other calmly, we have really solid communication skills, and we have capacity for intimacy and physical enjoyment of touch and sexual expression. These are a container for the experience of bliss. Then there's creativity that comes into this as well. So your bliss body is just as important as your physical body, mental body, emotional body, your spiritual body. There is a bliss body, and not that many people really get to be that familiar with their bliss bodies. People who are very creative often get to do that, and they have this extraordinary feeling of feeling fully in flow and totally connected with everyone and everything around them when they're in their flow state. But an overgiver can also have issues around rejection and being abandonment averse and avoidant to getting too close emotionally because they have become trained to be an overgiver because some part of their life involved a profound experience with either rejection and or abandonment by someone they really, really loved. And then the other thing about being an overgiver is that you're always someone who's going to volunteer, you're going to step up, you're going to take care of it, you're going to be the leader. And sometimes this, when you're perceived in this way by other people, they will think of you as a pleaser, or they will think of you as a pushover. Hey, just ask Sharon to do it. She'll do it. So you are perceived in ways that may not help you with the self-care that you need to learn to give first to you. You know the old saying on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first. So today we're just going to talk about your situation in your dating to mating adventure, and whether you're aware that you are in a deja vu dating situation. So it was important for me to go over these terms so that you can know whether you have some sense of, oh yeah, that empath, that sounds like me, or the overgiver sounds like me, or both. And then there's also, we'll talk about the taker tomorrow on day 2, but we need you to have a little bit of a map of where you are in your own sense of identity. Now, we are going to just identify that the taker is a taker. They take energy. They are a breaker. They have a way of breaking and disrupting energy that's flowing because they want to divert energy so that they can take it. And they will take any kind of energy. And they don't know what bliss is unless it incorporates a lot of pain. That's a distinguishing mark of a taker. They are addicted to pain and they like to inflict pain on other people in all kinds of ways, including physical abuse, but emotional abuse works for them as well. And they are what we call heartache makers, because in that dynamic that's going on with them internally in their energy field, they can really cause a lot of emotional damage and heartache and heartbreak for people who are closely entangled with them. Because when you're with a taker, it's an entanglement. It is not a healthy relationship. So we need to know that the taker, breaker, heartache maker is not about gender, but it is about a type that you attract and why. Because energy flows and it flows into, there's a saying, the universe loves a void, and that void is empty space. And if you are an empath or an overgiver, you allow your energy to flow because your boundaries aren't strong. You're not comfortable with empty space or silence. So we have to ask the question today, before we go into more information through the course of the challenge, how does the taker, breaker, heartache maker, if you've been exposed to it, how does this feel in your life? So your situation right now, today, as you sit here with me, what would you like to change about your current dating experiences? What feels good to you when you're with one or more people, and what especially feels good to you when you're with another person who you feel you can connect, you can converse easily, you feel safe with them, you have things in common, you enjoy some of the same interests. And then we have to get you to ask the question, what doesn't feel good to you? And you need to be just as aware of this and just as specific as you are about what feels good. And for most people, it's not as easy to identify what doesn't feel good, because pain comes in many variations and we're pain averse. So we generally don't want to go into the pain to feel where it lands in our bodies and parks itself and stays there. And it does do this. So this is a picture of someone who I would say is my ideal client, or someone who would work with me. She's 22. She's between 22 and 40. She's single. She is ready to date, to mate. She would like to get married and have a family. And if you look at the expression on her face, it's complicated. She looks hopeful. She looks a little sad. She looks like she's got energy to share, but she's not sure if she's going to. Just take a moment and look at her face and see if you can make some observations of your own about where she might be emotionally. Now, you may not know about energy yet, but just take a look and see if you have a sense of what you pick up about what might be going on with her emotionally or in her mind. And if you have some ideas, pop them into the chat. So when we get into a deja vu dating situation with a taker, breaker, heartache maker, they are carrying this kind of energy, and it is energy that is meant to cause pain, because that is how they bring energy into their energy fields. So they have, as an energy healer, I can see this because I have clairvoyant vision. I can see when someone's carrying this kind of energy and putting it out there in strong or subtle ways. You can sense this. This is the kind of energy that will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And if that happens to you and you're on a date, you need to excuse yourself as gracefully as you can and just give that person a call, tell them thank you for the evening in person, but then contact them afterwards and say that something's come up in your life and you won't be able to see them again. That is your safest first move. So there's a process that I call swimming with sharks. And it is when you get into a dating pool where there are people who carry that kind of energy. Little bits are in the extreme. They're usually very aggressive. They can be incredibly intelligent, but they can also be cold and cutting. And they may use sarcasm as one of their communication styles, or dropping into silence and stopping communicating and leaving you hanging, wondering where you are with them and what they're thinking. And this is what I call the Darth Vapor Twilight Zone. So, the Star Wars movies are part of our cultural lexicon. So is the Twilight Zone. And you all know who Darth Vader was. And if you've watched any of the Twilight Zone episodes, you have a sense of when reality goes askew. Well, when you're swimming with sharks, this is the environment that you're dating in. That guy, or that girl, or woman. Is she a girl or is she a woman? Who knows? Is she of age or isn't she? Can you tell? And these are the kinds of situations that can get you into so much difficulty, because if you look at her as compared to the other woman, what is she communicating? She's communicating, I want to play, I'm sexual, would you like to find out about that? This is the look that she has. It's very seductive. Now, it's also charming, and it's easy to miss the deeper cues here. Not so much if you're someone who's as experienced with this with my clients as I am. It's easy to spot the potential difficulties here. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. This is a person who has going to or who is going to give you a run for your money. And I do literally mean a run for your money, as well as your energy and time and pain. So this is what deja vu dating looks like when you get involved with someone who has got the Darth Vapor swimming with sharks energy, and they're using it to encircle you. And they're using that energy to hook your heart, hook your sexual apparatus, and then to bind the rest of your energy fields so that they can control the amount of energy that they will get from you. I know it's so clear and straightforward, but this is not something that's talked about in sex ed. And I'm hoping that in the future, before I pass away, I'll have the opportunity to have this brought into high schools and colleges so people could get an understanding about this. It would be really great for our future in any country, anywhere in the world. So being chakra bound, that looks like what I just showed you, results in energy field distortions that leave you emotionally drained, angry, and frustrated, in fear, and they begin to shut you down in the same way that a hunter will go and lay a trap out in the wild and bait that trap and then go back and check the trap to see whether or not an animal has been caught. Now, in the hunting situation with animals, there's usually something that's going to be the next step for that animal. And in most cases, it's not going to be something that the animal is looking for or is going to be happy about having the experience. But this is what you look like energetically. The image on the left shows your 15 chakras and their locations. Now, it only shows 2 aspects of the chakras, and there are 6 directions to every one of your chakra centers. And this is also another image of what happens when, as you begin to mature between the ages of 22 and 33, if your energy field isn't distorted or tinkered with or shut down, you will actually find that your energy fields begin to shift as you flower as an adult, because you have a life purpose. And when your energy field looks like this, you have begun to live your life purpose. So in your DNA, this is a small roadmap of what DNA can look like in the human energy field. And in your own particular case, you could have 12 to 48 strands braided strands of DNA that are healthy and activated. Now, that's more for the advanced work that I do, which we don't cover in this challenge, but I wanted you to recognize that your core energy that forms a shield for you on each of your 15 chakra levels is a wheel, and it spins, and it has two aspects. One is spinning clockwise and one is spinning counterclockwise, always creating a flowing vortex of living light and sound energy. This is what makes you you. Okay, so you are 15 chakras and seals. At levels 13, 14, and 15, you are actually a form of primal sound and light that forms a coherent field, a plasma field, and you are also crystalline in nature. And I love to share this information because it helps you understand how, when you're dating, if you're only aware of your chakras 1 through 7, this is why you're looking for your other half. Because the other half of you literally don't have any connection with, and that would be chakras 8 through 15. So when you have your embodied chakras operating, you are connected to your emotional body, your mental body, your physical body, but it's unlikely that you are connected to the more subtle energies of your physical body, such as your molecular, atomic, or quantum energy levels, which are available when you have all 15 of your chakras open and the energy is flowing, and the seals between your chakras are also open and flowing. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to observe and start to just feel yourself and ask some basic questions before we come into day 2 tomorrow. And just really take some time to think about whether or not you are able to identify any part of you that's an empath, an overgiver, a taker. You could be a combination of those depending on your primary family's organization of information as a family unit. So we know that there's mindset. We know today that there's therapy, there's MDMA, medications, there's psychedelics. All of those are interventions that try to help you get your natural organic whole energy field functioning as a natural organic whole energy field. And I like to share that from my perspective, one's bliss needs to be organic. I don't recommend using substances to move yourself into ecstasy or flow states that won't last, that you aren't able to manage, navigate, and modulate with your own conscious awareness. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. This is day 1. Now, you've signed up, so you should have gotten your workbook, and there is a workbook for this challenge. And if you haven't received that yet, it might have gone into your spam folder. So please let me know. Email me that you have not received your workbook. And then when we meet again tomorrow, I will have checked my messages and sent you the link for that. And or tomorrow I will pop the link to the downloadable version of the workbook for this challenge so that you have access to it and you can spend time with it during the week, the rest of the week when you have free time as we're going through the challenge. So again, I want to thank you for being here for day 1. Just take the time to rest, relax, observe your feelings, your thoughts, notice what's going on around you. This is a very, very stable, beautiful practice to begin to be more self-aware. And being self-aware is what will keep you out of the really emotionally draining, financially draining, potentially you get into a marriage and then it's super financially draining if you have children, because then you're looking at divorce, and that is hugely expensive process on every level of human activity. It is costly. So my goal is to prevent you from ever getting there in the first place.